in B2B with content marketing, but also kind of educate, entertain, inform all along the process. So, so I'll ask you to hold me to that, and if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to ask. And by the way, my favorite scent, I believe, is cilantro. I like things I can, so I'm going to go with cilantro. All right, so what we're going to cover today, just at a really high level, is really the key factors to content marketing success. So what does success in content marketing look like? We're going to talk about the core components of a content marketing strategy. So I'm literally going to show you the things that you can check off for your own company, or if you're an agency for your client companies, to really understand whether you're delivering on those core components of effective content marketing. Then, especially in B2B, I think it's important to think about how do we create content across the buyer journey and focus on content that converts. And so we're going to spend a lot of time on that. And then finally, I'm going to show you just a few examples of brands that I think are doing a really good job. So that's our agenda for the day. Hopefully that is what you thought you signed up for. And looking forward to it. Okay. So if you only get 3 things today, and this is my TLDR slide, if you know what that means. If you fall asleep in about 2 minutes, this is what I want you to walk away with. And this is probably not for you. I think most of you probably get this, but it's maybe for the boss, or for the client, or for a colleague that just hasn't really grasped the fact that the world has changed pretty significantly, and no other function in our businesses have been affected more than marketing. So we'll talk about specifically what that means. The second point is a little bit depressing, but unfortunately it's true, and I have math to back this up, and client examples that prove it. Most of the content we create as organizations, especially in B2B, is completely terrible. And most of the times when I say that, I know audiences are sitting back and thinking, oh, that's not us. Or maybe you're crying because you know it is you. But the fact is that it's true for all of us. And again, we'll talk about some examples of that. And then the final point is kind of a call to action. It's really the point of content marketing. And maybe it's a little bit far-fetched to say that we can create content that people might love. But I believe that the point of content marketing is to attract an audience with at least content that people might like to read, maybe they might share, and potentially could love. So again, we'll talk about some examples of ways that I think we can do that. All right, so in preparation for this speech, I did a little research. I do what we do when we have a question. I asked the gods at Google, what are the latest content marketing trends? So I put that into Google, and I landed on a site, and I'm not going to name the publisher, but they offered up this quote that I really had no idea what it was all about, and an ad that I certainly didn't want. Right? So a quote and an ad when I'm just looking for an answer to a question about content marketing trends. So finally I land on the site again. The publisher is not important. Don't focus on the publisher. But the point is, I land on this site hoping to read some content, and I'm delivered the most evil invention in the history of marketing. Maybe even the history of business, the autoplay video, right? So I'm scrambling with my computer to hit the mute button so my colleagues don't think that I'm playing fantasy football. So then I finally get to the article, and oh, here pops up an invitation for a survey. Okay, well, I don't want to do that, so I X out on that. I finally read about 180 words, maybe 185 words, and oh boy, what's this at the bottom? I gotta hit the continue button 3 times in order to read the rest of this 800-word article, which is actually a pretty good article, by the way. But the point here is that we've moved beyond our willingness to accept advertising-driven or supported content to the point where we're now getting pissed off. We want it to stop. If you're worried about Holly, she's fine. This GIF is just to display and convey the point that we are dying for this interruption to stop. So Holly's done. All right, so who's this dork? So this guy graduated college 22 years ago, so it's 1993. 22 years ago and 22 pounds lighter, probably. But something interesting happened in 1993. There was a company called Mosaic. Some of you may or may not have heard of them. They changed their name to Netscape and launched the first commercially available web browser. At the time, there were a couple hundred, university mostly, and research institutions connected to what at the time we were calling the information superhighway. By the end of 1994, there were hundreds of thousands and then millions of computers connected. So within just 12 months, we went from hundreds to millions of connections on the web. So literally, connections all across the world were happening. And this is the moment when businesses started to understand that the consumer was now in charge, right? And this is especially true in B2B. right? We are all in charge of the content experiences that we're looking for. We're looking for help when we go to the web to look for it. We're not looking for ads, we're not looking for rows. And so I like to use my children as an example of sort of this dramatic change. So if you have kids, you know that kids change your life. They force you to stop thinking only about yourself, which is what we have to do when we're in our teens and 20s, and to start thinking about not when are we going to sleep or what are we going to eat or how are we going to have fun, but how are they going to eat, how are they going to sleep, how are they going to have fun. So we know that this changed our lives if you have kids, and if you know people that have kids, you know that, right? So my oldest there to the right is 12 years old. She was actually born a week before LinkedIn launched. My second is 9, and she's about 3 months younger than when Twitter actually launched. My third is about a year apart from when Facebook was launched to the masses. My fourth one, I would struggle with this one. He's about a year younger than when Facebook bought Instagram for $1 billion. So these are my kids. I don't let them cross the street. I don't leave them home alone. They still ride in car seats mostly, right? And so think about how young they are, and yet in just 12 years, social media has dramatically changed the business landscape. Dramatically changed, especially the way we have to approach our consumers, our buyers, in B2B. And so this is a quote from a conference I was at earlier this year. And you all know this is true, right? Our content has to compete with pictures of babies and kittens and puppies. I'm trying to show you a few. So I showed you babies, I got you kittens now. And if you like dogs, your dogs are something like that. Here's 4 adorable little pugs that I actually saw one on my flight over here. So in just 1 minute, on the internet, and I'll just pull a few of these stats. So 204 million email messages are sent. I'm sure most of us feel like half of them have in our inbox. Every single minute. Just to the right of that, 4 million Google searches every single minute. 2.5 almost million Facebook updates every single minute. And then if you go just to the left of 12 o'clock, my favorite stat is that on YouTube, 3 days worth of video are uploaded every minute. So literally more content than we as a species could consume, right? And so I think we all feel this if you're a fan of House of Cards. My icebreaker is always, what do you love to binge watch, or what's your favorite binge watch show? Mine's Game of Thrones, by the way. We had that conversation during last night. But if you're a fan of House of Cards, you know, and this is the opening scene, we have no patience for useless things. There's just too much content, too much noise out there. And what we do as consumers is we just tune it out. So hopefully I'm kind of giving you some examples of that. Now, I want you to think about marketing. What is marketing? I don't know if you've ever really asked yourself that question. For those of you that are in marketing, or even if you're in business in any way, most of us think of marketing as ads, as billboards and banners, right? But some of us might even think of marketing as sales. And that's not really what marketing was all about. That's not the marketing I learned about 24 years ago in college. Here's a picture of Bank of America Stadium here for you Panthers fans, right? When I go to a football game, I'm not thinking about my checking account. And I'm not here to say that logos on stadiums are not an effective use of marketing dollars, but if you think about it, there's no Twitter stadium, there's no Facebook stadium, there's no Uber stadium or Apple stadium, right? Because the millennials today that run these companies aren't interested in putting their logos on stadiums. They're interested in creating products and content that we love. Here's another example. This is actually an amazing GIF. You see this one guy flips and then lands right on the side, right? So logos on cars, right? Going 200 miles an hour. Who makes these decisions, right? And so that's what most of us think about as marketing. And yet, especially as we think about younger generations, they're looking at all this and they're saying, what the hell is going on? Right? That's how we're making our consumers feel. When this is what we really want. Pictures of kittens cuddling with each other. So I believe that as brands, we can create this kind of stuff. So, all right, so I told you I was going to try to have a little bit of fun, but now we're going to get a little bit more serious. I think this point here is probably as great a call to action as it could be. We need to stop interrupting the content experiences that our buyers are looking for and start delivering, creating, publishing the kinds of experiences and content that our buyers are looking for. The promise of content marketing, if you're, what's the ROI of content marketing is probably the biggest question I get. And the point here is that the promise of content marketing is to attract an audience instead of buying it. And I'll show you some ways that you can quantify that. But to attract an audience instead of buying it, so that each page view, each engagement, each conversion to a lead isn't for incremental dollars, but is based on an initial investment that grows in value over time. Again, we'll talk about how to do that. All right, so Seth Godin, one of my favorite authors, wrote this book 8 years ago, talking about this point that marketing has a marketing problem. If you ask most people what marketing is, people have a bad impression. Most people think that marketers are snake oil salesmen in a way, right? That we're liars, we tell stories that aren't true. And there's a long history of ads that sort of support this point. He was interviewed by David Meerman Scott, and he said, you know, when you wrote that book, you were almost defining what content marketing is before we started talking about it. And Seth actually said, I don't know what content marketing is. So David Meerman Scott explained it to him, and he said, well, if that's what content marketing is, then that's all the marketing that's left. And so as marketers, I think going back to this book, right? Our job as marketers is to tell stories. We need to think of our job as being storytellers and to approach the things that we create in the way the storytellers approach them. All right, so steps to effective content marketing. So here's my secret. My secret is that content marketing, for those of you that are in smaller businesses, is not that hard and it's not that expensive. And this is what I mean. The buyer journey is nothing more than a series of questions that have to be answered. Your business exists because you're providing a unique solution to a problem. And all you need to do is answer your buyer's questions at each stage of their journey. You have all the experience and all the knowledge that you need inside your organization. It's the reason your company was founded. It's the reason your product succeeds. And every business is unique. So every business can deliver on this promise of simply answering your customers' questions. To look at this in a little bit more dense way, this is from TechTarget, and it's specific to the IT buyer journey. But you can think about it as there's 3 stages. There's the early, the middle, and the late stage. When we're asking very specific types of questions of Google. There's different people that are traveling along that buyer journey, and there's different types of content that we're interested in at each stage. So you can visually map this for your own organization. And I think what you see here is that the large majority of the content needs that we have as buyers happen in the early and the middle stages. And yet the large majority of the content we create is about our products and our services and why we're better. So think about that mix inside your own organization. I'll give you a case study from SAP in a second. I love this quote from Ann Hanley. Take your brand out of the story, make your customers the hero. If you think about the content that you create, is it truly focused on your customer, or is it focused on talking about your business? I love this Venn diagram. This is my definition of content marketing, sort of I think everything in life can be explained in a Venn diagram. So everything on the left is what we create as brands. It's all the stuff we create as brands. Everything on the right is what our buyers are interested in. Content marketing is the gap, right? So that makes sense, but think about the space on the left is pure waste. All of the stuff that you create on the left, you create because you think you need to create it to promote your business. But there's actually no one that's interested in it, right? Joe Polizzi, and I think an important point, and I was talking about this earlier, the difference between content and content marketing is a destination. If you create content for wherever, that's just content. But if you're attracting an audience to a brand-owned content hub or a destination, that's what content marketing is. It's owned media. It's something that you're publishing on a site that you own that attracts people. So this is why native ads, for example, aren't content marketing. Native ads are ads, right? They're reliant upon the publisher. Content marketing requires building your house on your own land, not renting space. And then this is something, this is sort of a warning. And I hear this a lot from companies. They say, yeah, there is a lot of noise out there, so we need to present our unique point of view. And I don't disagree that there's a point in the buyer journey where your company's unique point of view is important. But I think the question to ask is, does your customer care about your unique point of view? Do your buyers need your unique point of view, or do they just need questions answered? Do they just need help in the journey? And so at some point, they might need to understand what makes you different. So unique point of view is okay, but I think the point of your unique point of view is a little bit more navel-gazing. It's a little bit more about your business. And I see a lot of companies get caught up in trying to figure out what makes them unique and losing focus on the customer, right? So think about focusing on your customer, not getting caught in the unique point of view trap. Okay, so 7 steps to content marketing success. Number 1, documented content marketing strategy or mission statement. Balancing paid, owned, and earned. We're going to talk about each of these in a second. I apologize for the mix-up on the slide there. Focusing on content subscribers. Probably the hottest topic in content marketing today is a focus on subscriptions, because subscriptions drive conversion. Readers don't read blog posts and buy $500,000 worth of SAP software. That's something I learned the hard way. But subscribers were 10 times more likely to do anything you could value, and I'll show you how we did that. So focus on content subscriptions. Balancing paid, owned, and earned. We're going to talk a little bit about the importance of distribution, and not just creating content, but also splitting your budget between creation and distribution. And then finally, content marketing ROI. So the point about content marketing ROI is ironic. And the reason it's ironic is that it's the biggest question we get, especially from CMOs who often have their arms folded and their legs crossed, and they say, what's the ROI of this content marketing program? And the answer is, well, what's the ROI of your marketing overall? What's the ROI of the logo on your statement? At SAP, we loved putting our logo on a golfer's hat. What's the ROI of that? I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I know it's completely not trackable. The ROI of content marketing is 100% trackable. And in every case that we've looked, we found not just 10% or 20% or 30% more ROI than the average ROI in marketing, but 200, 300, 400% more return on investment in content marketing. So I'll give you some examples of that as well. So, okay, that one you can see a little bit better. We do this with our customers, so I run full-day workshops with our clients every single day. And this is the slide that we spend probably the most amount of time on, because it's important to understand your current state. Now, the average grade that we actually give people is a D, believe it or not. And that's okay, because the point is it's really good, it's really important to understand where you are with each of these different components of content marketing success, and then grade yourself honestly, so that you can figure out where the gaps are and then figure out how to fill those gaps. So hopefully I'll talk a little bit about each one of these. The biggest gaps, if you're wondering, that we often see is mapping content to the buyer journey, again, which I'll talk about, paid distribution, and focus on subscriptions. So a lot of content marketers are publishing content, they have budgets, they have people, they have a destination, but mapping content to the buyer journey, focusing on subscribers, and making sure there's paid distribution behind it is usually the biggest gap. All right? Okay, so building a successful content marketing strategy. So really quick case study on sort of the journey, my journey into content marketing. So I was head of digital for SAP North America for about 3 years. And what I found, I was doing essentially online media with content to drive leads, pay-per-lead programs essentially. And what I found was that the sales team was giving me brochures, and I was able to find a few thought leadership type white papers, Forrester, analyst reports, and things like that. And what I found was that the brochures, the promotional content delivered 0 leads, no matter how much I pushed it. But the thought leadership stuff drove conversion. The thought leadership stuff drove people into our funnel that we could convert and quantify. At actually a 4x rate. For every dollar we spend, we're able to deliver $4 in sales, starting with a thought leadership piece of content that answered a customer question, having our sales team follow up, and then converting them to leads. And so based on that insight, our CEO was delivering a speech at the SAP annual conference in 2011, and he walked off the stage and literally 20 minutes later turned to the CMO and he said, I talk about thought leadership, I talk about how technology drives innovation for our customers, but I look at our website and we talk about our products. So can we fix that? Okay, so 12 months later, it took me 12 months to navigate the internal politics, mainly from our own digital marketing team, and the resistance to actually putting thought leadership on our homepage. So how did I break through that resistance? It started with a lot of math, and so there's a lot of math on this slide, a lot of numbers. The point here is that I looked at branded versus unbranded search traffic overall. So how many people were asking about big data in Google versus how many people were asking about SAP Big Data, which was a solution we were currently focusing on. And what I found was that 3,000 times more people were asking what is big data than the people that were asking about our own product in that area. So I said, hey, there's this huge audience of people in the early stages of the buying funnel. Next question, how many of those people in the early stages, how many people asking what is big data are finding their way to our website? And unfortunately the answer was 1 in 10,000, so the math on that is 99.9% of our traffic. All branded search. These are people that were typing SAP into their browser and finding their way to our website. They already knew who we were, they already knew what we sold, they were probably already engaged in sales with the salesperson, and they were mainly looking for contracts and pricing, right? So a small group of people who already knew who we were, those were the only people we were reaching with our website. So massive audience of people, none of them finding their way to our website. And why was that? Well, because we had a content problem. So again, remember I said the Venn diagram earlier, think about all the content we create as companies, that's what we were doing at SAP. So you can see here, the large majority, 94% of our content was focused on middle and late stage buyer questions, basically product, and not enough, only 6% of our content was focused on that early stage stuff. So we launched the website. It was called Business Innovation. They just rebranded it about a week ago. And we had a really simple mission statement to help businesses or business leaders understand how technology drove innovation. It was basically the speech that our CEO gave a year before. And so our one editorial rule was no promotion, no product content whatsoever on the website. We had promotional stuff on the edges all over the place, calls to action everywhere. But the articles themselves were answering those buyer questions. What is big data? How do companies take advantage of big data solutions? What's this cloud computing business all about, right? We were answering simple customer questions and getting tons of traffic from it. 12,000 articles now posted on that site. And we drove a lot of traffic. And the interesting thing here is this is our organic and social traffic. Every presentation I've ever given has a chart that goes up and to the right. So babies, kittens, puppies, and a chart that goes up and to the right. Four important elements of any presentation. What's interesting is we have advertising, banner traffic driving to the site as well. So that's on top of this traffic. Millions of dollars invested in digital display to drive only this exact amount. So 50% of our traffic was organic and social, which came basically for no incremental investment. 50% of our traffic was paid with millions of dollars of investment, millions of dollars of investment. So think about the ROI implications of that, and I'll talk about that in a second. But the point here is that organic and social traffic is an indicator of the baseline health of a content marketing hub that you might build. So think about organic and social traffic. All right, so what is a content marketing strategy? Thinking and acting like a publisher, you may have heard that term. What do publishers do? They create content for their audience. They don't promote any content. We wouldn't read the Washington Post or the Wall Street Journal if there were ads embedded in that content. They create content they know their audience is interested in, and they publish every single day, right? My favorite analogy is CNN doesn't wake up one day and say, you know, there's not a lot going on in Europe today. I'm just gonna talk about Europe. We're just gonna talk about the debate last night. No, they publish every single day, not just about the debate that happened last night, but also about what's going on in Europe and what's going on in international business and all kinds of things that they've committed to publishing. So publishing, thinking and acting like a publisher means creating content that your audience is interested in and committing to publishing every single day. The third point there, I think is really important, right? So when you create a platform that answers customer questions, the moment you stop investing in that platform, you'll continue to see traffic and conversion. So you've created an asset that delivers a return and has a lifetime value that grows over time. So it's kind of it's my note for those financial-minded people in the audience. When you build a content marketing hub, you've created an asset for the business that has value, that even if you stop investing, grows over time. So really important there. Okay, so the biggest difference, this is from the Content Marketing Institute, the marketing profs, they do the survey every year. Every year the same insight comes out as the #1 difference between effective and ineffective content marketers. So effective content marketers have a strategy. Ineffective content marketers don't have a strategy. That's relatively obvious. Ineffective content marketers, they're just doing stuff. They're like driving a car with a destination. The biggest difference that's interesting though is that we see 5 times more effective content marketers have documented their content marketing strategy. So the biggest difference is not that they have one, but that they've written it down. And so why do you think that is? And you know, I've asked that question a lot, and I think it comes down to alignment across the business. When you've documented what you're trying to do, you can share that with the business and say, this is what we're doing, and stop asking us to promote content. We're answering customer questions, we're gonna build a destination that's gonna have value and will convert to business, right? So documenting your content marketing mission statement. The best example of this, American Express Open Forum is always talked about as a great example of content marketing. And I think what really drove that is this simple mission statement to help small businesses do more business, right? That was their simple mission statement when they started. And now 7 years in, and they achieved this within 3 years. It's the single largest source of new card members for their small card business division. The single source of inbound leads for their new business. So when you create content for your customers with a really clear and written down mission statement, you can drive business. So content that converts, right? So think about the importance of a mission statement. So if we were doing a workshop, I would literally workshop this around the room, but you know, I'm gonna make these slides available. So think about this, go back to your business and think about, are you creating content for your customers and how would you define your own mission statement? So to become a destination for who, interested in what, and in order to do what for them. What's the customer value? What's the focus? There's always a question people sometimes challenge me on is, can you become a premier destination? Can you literally compete with the New York Times? I had that question once. And I think the point is that every business, I've already said, is unique, right? unique value, unique expertise, a unique solution in the marketplace, and there is some topic for some audience that you can become a premier destination in. It's just a matter of finding out what that thing is. How small do you have to go in order to figure out what's the unique value and how can you focus on that audience. So focusing on a niche audience with your unique value is really important. Okay, this is the slide I hate the most. It's really more of a takeaway, and like I said, I made the slides available. They're on SlideShare. I tweeted it out, right? I think I scheduled it for noon, so it's out there. But this is kind of essentially what we do in our workshops. There's about 18 questions here. If you sit down with your marketing team and you answer every one of these bullets as a question, you'll have a documented content marketing strategy that meets all of the criteria I've already talked about with best practices. Okay, so show me the money, right? Where is the ROI? And so we've spent a lot of time talking about this, and like I said, my first sort of snarky response to the executives that ask that is, well, what's the ROI of your marketing overall? Do you really know what it is? And do you know what the ROI is for specific kinds of marketing? And if the answer is yes, then you're doing a lot better than most people. But specifically, to get to ROI, people often forget that this is a calculation. And everybody wants to talk about performance, right? How did the content do? Did it convert? All those kinds of things. But what's really important is you have to understand the cost of your content first. How much money does your organization spend to create content? That's question number one. Question number two is how much of that content actually gets used? And so we did this audit at SAP. We looked at just one product area, just one target audience, and we found that 60% of the content we created never got used at all. So it was created for sales enablement, and no one in the sales team ever downloaded it. It was copy for the web that never got actually pasted onto the web. It was a campaign asset that never actually ran in the campaign. 60% of the content that we created never got used. That is 100% pure waste. So 100% impossible to drive any kind of ROI. So you have to understand cost and utilization before you get to performance. And I'll talk about how to measure performance. So I think in general, understanding the value of content marketing, ROI, starts with a business case. And I think for almost everyone, the business case can be that you want to reach, engage, and convert new buyers. That early stage folks that are asking simple questions that you can answer with the kinds of content that you can create, with the knowledge and expertise that you have inside. So reach, engage, and convert new buyers that weren't already going to your website. There's what I call 12 levers here. And these are specific kinds of calculations that you can actually use to specifically identify content marketing ROI. I'm not going to walk through each one of these, but I do want to point out just a few. So within reach, engage, and convert, at SAP we actually reported every single month on the value we were delivering on each one of these. So in reach, I already talked about, right, that opportunity in all of that unbranded search that wasn't reaching their site. So every single one of those visitors that came from an unbranded search, 90% of our traffic on that website was unbranded. Every single one of those that engage and convert with us is a new buyer. Every single one of them is a net new buyer for our business. So reach, engage, convert, unbranded search traffic. Banner effectiveness at driving traffic, I already talked about, right? So we spent about $100,000 to build the content platform. Advertising was spending about $12 million on digital display, and we were driving the same traffic. So you can do the math there. We were generating organic search traffic from search terms that we, as a company, were also paying Google for paid search ads. So every one of our visits, we knew the cost per click, and we could do the value and say, we don't need to spend that money on paid search because we're getting them organically for free. So there's just three. We looked at subscribers. Subscribers, I think I already mentioned, we converted at 10 times our average visitor. 10 times to download a white paper with a lead form, register for an event, ultimately talk to a salesperson. We actually were able to quantify the value of every single subscriber. So every person that subscribed to our blog was then nurtured into some sort of a campaign that converted in a way that we could value the cost of that conversion. And then finally, revenue. We actually drove revenue initially from subscribers. Mainly it was events, so it wasn't exactly software revenue, but we were having people pay to come to training courses. In the first 3 months, we justified the expense. So we had more than what we spent on the platform justified in direct conversion to revenue in just the first 3 months. So reach, engage, and convert. Again, not going to teach a class on this here, but it's something to think about. About 8 months of that 12-month journey at SAP was all focused on, do we want to build, and there's a 2x2 here, right? Branded versus unbranded, on versus off domain. So we built a site called blogs.sap.com/innovation. I wanted to build www.businessinnovation.com off domain. I lost that battle, and the reason that I'm really happy I lost was that the day that we launched, I had organic search traffic, because the sap.com domain, for those of you that know SEO, had authority in search engines. So there's a good reason to go on and off domain sometimes. A good reason to go off domain is if you really want to move away from your brand, if you're trying to change perceptions in your industry about who you are. We do that with a company, with Bear, something called the Timeline Project. They wanted to create a website to help women do family planning, and they didn't want Bear's name all over it. So they created the timelineproject.com. So there's sometimes good reasons to go off domain. And then branded versus unbranded, Pepsi.com, their homepage is literally a lifestyle magazine. They realized that talking about carbonated, caramel flavored stuff that makes you fat doesn't really help them engender a new audience of folks. So they started talking about lifestyle things, music and food, and the kinds of entertaining things that we're all interested in. So their homepage is literally on domain and heavily branded. At SAP, we built on domain and relatively unbranded. So we wanted to sort of make sure there was no sense of real promotion or something. So a lot of time needs to be spent thinking about on domain, off domain, branded versus unbranded. All right, makes sense? All right, and this is my point about distribution. The average, I didn't realize this is for a quote from Andrew Davis. If you know who he is, he's one of the best speakers, I think, in marketing. And he was actually a child actor, and he worked on the Muppets, and kind of learned the Hollywood budgeting cycle. And he realized, kind of the surprise, that half the budgets for Hollywood movies goes to the content production, right? So the actors and the directors and the sets and food for all the people on set. The other half goes to distribution and promotion. So even great content, even Hollywood movies, and Hollywood realizes that great content needs a push. And so, I always say, think about, to start, about a 50-50 split between creation and distribution. And then measurement. So I had a call the other day from this woman from a pharmaceutical company, and she was like, I have this KPI spreadsheet for my boss. It's got 62 measures on it. I want you to review it. Tell me if you think I've missed anything. I was like, yeah, I can definitely cut that down. She's like, no, I want you to tell me like what I need to add to it, because I want to make sure I'm measuring everything. I was like, no, okay. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to measure content marketing. I think I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 measures. Basically, you just need to look at traffic, engagement, and conversion. And the way I would do that is page views, social shares, and subscriptions. If you're only going to pick 3, so page views, social shares, and subscriptions. If you're looking at specific kinds of content like video, you might want to look at the amount of time spent on the video, those kinds of things, downloads on your site. There's other ways to measure different kinds of content quality, but for the program overall, look at page views, especially from organic and social. Social shares is a measure of the outside community voting on the value of your content, and then subscriptions is a proxy for conversion. Okay? And then, I know this is not a B2B example, but has anyone seen the site Van Winkle's? Anyone familiar with this? So, anyone heard of Casper? So Casper is a company that does mattresses in a box. And so for about half the price of what you'd spend at Sleepy's or wherever you buy normal mattresses or furniture stores, they said it's actually pretty amazing mattresses, apparently. Amazing mattresses that come literally shipped in a box for about half the price. And so they're getting a lot of buzz, and they're big in New York and San Francisco, Chicago, and some of the bigger cities, but now they're starting to get a lot of attention across the country. So they actually already have a Caspers.com blog, which talks about their products and talks about the questions that their customers have. But they actually went a little step further. They found that there's this weird audience of people that are obsessed with sleep. And so they created this total off-domain and completely unbranded website called Van Winkle's, so now you can probably see the connection to sleep. And they have these, they hired a guy from Gawker, so you can probably see sort of even visually, and the headlines that they use are usually pretty interesting and sometimes inappropriate. So I pulled this one, which is not necessarily inappropriate, but it's an amazing example, I think, of a company that's looking at creating a brand-owned asset that's at the earliest stages of their buyer funnel, right? They found this group of people that are obsessed with sleep. They're creating this destination for them and slowly trying to build them in. And the way that they're building them in is with this. I think that I'm actually copying this, right? I'm redesigning my blog and I'm literally stealing this call to action. So they have it at the top when you land on their page, and if you read about 2/3 of any article, you get this pop-up box, right? And the point is, we want you to love our content. We want you to vote on whether you love our content by subscribing to it. And when they subscribe to it, then they're going to nurture them with, obviously, campaigns and programs and ads about Casper mattress. So think about generating content that attracts an audience based on content that people love. All right, so utilizing content across the buyer journey. I'm going to move relatively quickly through this, but this is the stat from Serious Decisions. I think it's the most overused stat in B2B, and if you haven't heard it, I used to parade the stat all around the halls at SAP every chance that I got. 60 to 70% of the content we create as companies goes completely unused. If you think that it's not true for your business, do an audit and you'll find that 50 to 70%. I've never seen it lower than 50%. We've done about 12 content audits for customers. No less than 50% of the content that marketers are creating goes completely unused. It's complete waste. And to use a GIF image, it's just floating in the wind. It's created for the business, but not for any specific customer. So why does this happen? Why do we create content that no one is interested in, that never gets used? And so this is the reason. And you all know this guy. And maybe some of you are this guy or gal. But the point is, we create content because we think our boss wants us to. And what I don't want to do is point the finger, because I think we're all accountable for pushing back. I think the reason I do and love to do speaking engagements is because I want you to become the army of folks that are going to start to push back. And there's a natural tendency for the business to want to talk about itself, right? If you started your own business, it's like having a baby. You love your baby, you want to talk about your baby all the time. And that's a natural instinct, and that's okay. But as marketers, we need to push back. We need to ask, is this something that our customers are really going to find value in, right? So it's not just this guy's fault. I think we're accountable for stopping this deluge of content that no one wants. If you're interested in doing a content audit, here's a simple template. Again, just more for you to download if you're interested. It's not that hard. It's just a couple of things. You need to take one small sample of the content you create, try to do it somewhat randomly so that you're not sort of gaming the system. And just look at the type, who it's for, what stage they're in, the destination, and maybe if you have any metrics about it. But the main thing to look at is really, was it ever used, right? So just look at what content in a small sample of what you create, was it ever used, and you'll likely find 50 to 70%, which is good. Okay, how do you create content across the buyer journey? It's really simple. You just have to go to Google and look at the kinds of things that people are searching for in your category. So we're a content marketing technology company, and we know that the first question people ask is, what the hell is content marketing? So we create a ton of content. 9 out of every 10 articles we create is basically an answer on what is content marketing, or why should I consider using content marketing? Because we know that 10 to 3,000 times more people are asking that question. So 10 to 3,000 times more of our content should be answering these questions. And then people start to ask, and there's a general flow to this, right? People ask, what is it? Why should I use it? How do I do it? And then they ask, who does it and how much is it? Right? So every business, every category, every topic, your buyers are going through those basic questions. What is it? Why should I consider it? How do I get good at it? Who's doing it? And how much does it cost? So think about that for your own business. And then how do we create the kind of content? In content marketing, everybody wants to rush in. I just want to make sure who's doing what are we going to talk about? What are we going to write about? Who's going to do the writing? And what I think is really important, this is actually my favorite chart, because it's counterintuitive. If you ask people to choose between quality and quantity, 100% of the time, 100% of the people of you will probably say quality, always. Quality over quantity. But the point is that's a false choice. We have to do both. We have to do quality and quantity. This is from HubSpot. They do this research every year. And every year they find that the more you publish, the more reach and conversion you see. This is actually the chart of conversion. And so the point is, and you might think that quality diminishes with the more you publish. And the point is that as long as you set the bar low or high enough for quality, and you're answering your customers' questions, you're going to see more reach and more conversion the more you publish. And so it's kind of like a train. It's a machine. You got to build a machine that sets, again, the bar for quality, but it's thinking about creating that momentum that a machine can create. So focus on creating more quality content. If you're interested in a tool, BuzzSumo, anybody have not heard of BuzzSumo? You've heard of it? I'm in this tool every single day, buzzsumo.com, BUZZSUMO.com. So I type in content marketing plans, which is something I want to be influential in, and found that luckily for me, one of my articles in the Content Marketing Institute is ranked second. And so that helped me understand in the content marketing plan topic, I now know what content, based on all of the social shares out there, people are interested in, right? So what content are people interested in is something you can figure out by just going to this free tool, buzzword.com. I saw the Content Marketing Institute showed up a lot. So then I went in and typed in contentmarketinginstitute.com, and I see all of the articles that ranked highly on Content Marketing Institute. So now I know what topics I need to write about if I want to resonate with the audience at the Content Marketing Institute. Right? So luckily for me, 17 content marketing tips for any size budget showed up number 2. So and then you can also understand with this tool who the influencers are. So you can see, so think about that. One tool that's free, you can type in your category or topic. You can see what topics resonate, what sources are important, and who's influential. Right? I think I'm going off here something, so I probably need it. Another way to think about this is just think about the questions that people are asking. I often get this question about personas. What about buyer personas? And I wrote an article because I got frustrated after seeing a few really bad personas. That personas are great except when they suck. And unfortunately, a lot of personas suck. And a lot of them, I saw SAP spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on really thick books that you could have thrown right in the trash because they didn't identify the topics, the sources, and the influencers in the spaces that we were interested in. So I'm not saying personas aren't important. I think it's just important to think about what questions your buyers are asking, what searches they're making in Google, what stages they're in, and then filter that and see if it's important to your persona. Right mix of content. At SAP, I actually started at the bottom here. I used employee-generated content for free. I found a bunch of bloggers and I re-syndicated their content for free. I then went to Newsprint and bought licensed content from publishers through Newsprint. You can get 10 articles for the cost of one original piece of content. And then we moved into original content. So if you're interested in how do you budget for content marketing, try to maximize as much as you can your customers, your employees, your executives, in creating content for free. The answers to your customers' questions exist inside your organization. And then think about original content. And then how to rank for search. I was talking about the 3 V's: volume, value, and variety. It gets tricky when you get to variety. So visual content is becoming so important. Obviously, hopefully you're seeing that in the presentation that we're getting there. And then for each topic, think about, we call this atomization. When you have an idea, don't just think about an article, but think about how you create a video and a slide share and a podcast or whatever kinds of images that might be important for your audience. Okay, so just going to wind down and then hopefully we've got some time for questions. Companies doing it right, and again, not a B2B example, but I think no one gets this better than Red Bull, who said that brands literally need to take the phrase acting like a publisher, literally, right? We have to take the phrase acting like a publisher, literally. And they've created redbulletin.com, which they now monetize, right? They're making money. They're selling ads with redbulletin.com. They're selling ads and making money, direct advertising revenue from a content marketing platform. So they are literally acting like a publisher. In B2B, one of my favorite sites is Buffer. If you're not a user of Buffer, it's a social automation tool. They don't just talk about social automation. They realized that their audience is marketers and they wanted to be the best answer on the internet for any question a marketer asks. So they think bigger than themselves. They're thinking about their target audience and thinking about all the questions that we may be asking as marketers. So great resource following them. Capgemini's content move, this is a Newsprint customer, but I think it's a great example. They use licensed content, so they basically publish Forbes and Fast Company and New York Times content on their own content hub. They do LinkedIn sponsored updates to reach their targeted audience. So they do a LinkedIn sponsored update specifically to their target audience. It drives traffic to their branded content hub, off-domain branded content hub. And then when you read an article, it says, oh, you're interested in cloud computing? Well, maybe you want to LinkedIn connect with this guy who's our expert in cloud computing. So think about that. It's kind of a soft conversion, but they're generating millions of dollars of new consulting revenue by having their audience connect on LinkedIn with their experts. So think about that I think it's a great example of content that converts. So this is Mayerson. A lot of people use this example of B2B, but this is the butt of a ship, and 2,300 people liked it. So if 2,300 people could like the butt of a ship, then you could find that many people that could like whatever you might be thinking about, whatever your brand is interested in, right? So think about visual content. Everybody's familiar with GE's Vines. What I think is important about GE is they focus on their mission as a company to bring innovation to the world, right? It's not about wind turbines. It's about innovation. They exist because of innovation, all the way back to their founding, right? So they focus on the content they create as delivering on this mission of helping support innovation in any form all around the world. Their minds are, I think, a great example of that. And then this is Wistia, so I know we have video people in the room, right, Frank?
Mm-hmm.
And a great example, as Frank is taking video, is iPhone 6. They're really eating their own, taking their own medicine, eating their own dog food, whatever analogy you want to take. So they're a video production platform. I think I've explained that right, maybe, sort of, kind of. And so what do? They create videos about how to create videos. What's the answer? I'm gonna use it, Frank. So I said I would last night at dinner. What's the answer to the question, how do I create a viral video? Does anybody know the answer to that? The answer is shut up. That's the only answer to the question, how do I create a viral video? I promise Frank used that last night too. They're not trying to create viral videos, they're just answering their customers' questions. This example is, how do I create great video using an iPhone 6? And they have tons of these articles, tons of these videos that support their customers' questions. And then they give this helpful piece of advice, and then they have a really strong call to action. Subscribe to what we're doing. And they're really successful on a relatively small budget, doing video content about video content. So they're never. All right, anyway, so tips for creating content that converts. Stop promoting, create for real people. Answer your customers' questions. Really simple. Focus on subscriptions and CTAs. So I started with 3 things. I'm going to end with 3 things, right? So stop promoting, create content for real people. I know it's harder than it sounds, but I think if we all band together, we can make that happen. It's not hard. It's not expensive. Just answer your customers' questions. And you have the answers inside your company. Just answer customer questions. And focus on subscriptions. Subscriptions are votes of the value of your content, and subscriptions can be converted through lead nurturing. Right? So focus on subscriptions as the one metric if you're going to pick one for conversion. All right, so I think that's it for me. So I'll end with just a final gem. Thank you for putting up with me for I don't know how long I've spoken about, but I do appreciate your time and attention. And then just a call to action. Your audience, your buyers are looking for answers to their questions. They're looking for stories that don't suck. They're looking for stories they might actually like to read. They want to share great content, and you can create stuff they might even love. So that's my call to action for you, and my question is, okay? So I love questions, challenges, anything from anyone in the audience, please. I'm talking for too long. So.